Have you ever, like, gotten that notification that your hard drive is full and it's like, oh,
Oh, yeah.
like, I can't do anything more.
Yeah,
My computer's basically useless now.
right. You think, oh, it's time for a new computer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what if I told you that that full hard drive
Okay.
might actually be the key to solving some of, like, the biggest problems in computer science?
That sounds crazy.
This sounds a little wild, right?
Yeah.
But that's exactly what we're going to dive into today.
I love it.
We're looking at this Quanta Magazine article. Catalytic computing taps the full power of a full hard drive.
It's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how they get into this idea.
Yeah, and it's something that people have been thinking about for a long time, this idea of, can you actually use a hard drive that's full to actually compute?
Okay, so just for like a quick background for listeners who may not be familiar with like the nitty-gritty of computer science.
Yeah.
Can you just give us a quick overview of like computational complexity?
Yeah.
And that whole world?
So computational complexity is all about how much time and how much memory it takes to solve a problem.
Okay.
And, some problems are really easy to solve. They don't take much time or memory,
Yeah.
adding two numbers together. But other problems are really hard to solve. They take a lot of time and they might take a lot of memory.
Right, like finding the shortest route between a million different cities or something?
Exactly, or like breaking encryption.
Yeah, yeah.
These are problems that can take years or even centuries to solve with our current computers.
So the real like question at the heart of this is,
Yeah.
can any problem that can be solved quickly also be solved with like very minimal memory?
That's the big question.
Okay.
And it's a question that's been around for decades.
Okay, and I think this article really hinges on this one specific problem
Right.
that was thought to be like a possible key to solving that question.
Exactly. It's called the tree evaluation problem.
Okay. Tree evaluation problem. I'm picturing like a big oak tree.
Well, imagine a tournament bracket,
Mm.
like for March Madness.
Yeah.
But instead of basketball teams, you have these simple math problems.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to solve them in pairs, and then the winner of each pair moves up the bracket, and you keep doing that until you get to the final winner.
So it's like March Madness, but for math.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
And the thing is, these brackets can be massive, like millions or even billions of problems.
So this is where the memory comes into play.
Right. You need a lot of memory to keep track of all the intermediate results as you're solving the problem.
Okay, so researchers thought they had this problem that was quick to solve, but needed a lot of memory.
Right?
And then catalytic computing comes along and is like, hold my beer.
Exactly. That's where things get really interesting.
Okay, so tell me about catalytic computing. Like, where did that idea even come from?
Well, it actually started with a computer scientist named Michal Koucký.
Okay.
And he was trying to prove that a hard drive that's completely full is basically useless for computation.
That seems pretty intuitive, right?
Yeah, it seems like you're trying to write on a page that's already full of ink.
Right.
But then he and his colleagues, Harry Berman and Richard Cleve, they had this idea.
Go ahead.
What if you had a tiny computer with very little memory,
Okay.
but access to this massive hard drive that's completely full?
Okay, that's like having a tiny notepad,
Yeah,
but you've got access to the Library of Congress.
exactly. And the
Okay.
key is you're allowed to make changes to the data on that hard drive.
Okay.
But you have to put everything back exactly the way you found it.
So it's like you can write notes in the margins of those library books,
Right.
but you got to erase them before anyone notices.
Exactly.
Okay, I like it.
And what they found is that by making these temporary changes to the data on the hard drive, you can actually boost the computational power of that little computer.
So even though the hard drive is full, you can still use it to do more than you could before.
Exactly. It's like magic.
So they call this catalytic computing because,
Think of a catalyst in chemistry. It speeds up a reaction without being consumed itself.
yeah.
And in catalytic computing, the full hard drive is like the catalyst. It enables you to do these complex computations without actually changing the data on the hard drive permanently.
Okay, I'm starting to get it, but how does this relate back to that tree evaluation problem?
Right.
Like that was all about using minimal memory, right?
Right, that's what puzzled everyone at first.
Right.
They saw catalytic computing, which needs this massive full hard drive, and thought, well, that's irrelevant to the tree evaluation problem, which is about making do with very little memory.
Right, so it seemed like two totally separate ideas.
Yeah.
One needs a ton of memory, the other's trying to use as little as possible.
Exactly.
Okay.
But then enters James Cook,
Okay.
the son of Stephen Cook, who actually co-designed the tree evaluation problem.
Well, talk about a family legacy.
I know, right?
So he, like, inherited this problem from his dad.
Kind of.
Okay, so what did he do with this catalytic computing idea?
Well, even after leaving academia to become a software engineer, James couldn't shake this feeling that there might be a connection
Okay.
between catalytic computing and this problem that he'd grown up with.
So he's like, I got to figure this out.
Yeah, for years he worked on this in his spare time,
Wow.
determined to find a way to apply catalytic computing to the tree evaluation problem.
That's dedication.
It is. And then in 2019, he met Ian Mertz, a graduate student who was also fascinated by catalytic computing.
Okay, so we've got two brilliant minds, a seemingly impossible problem, and this revolutionary new idea.
Exactly.
This is where it gets good.
This is where it gets really good.
Okay, so they teamed up James and Ian, and what did they find?
Well, what they managed to do was pretty remarkable.
Okay.
They actually designed a catalytic algorithm for the tree evaluation problem.
Wait, so they applied this idea that needs like a ton of memory to a problem that's all about using as little as possible.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, they weren't actually using a massive hard drive for this. Instead, they figured out how to, like, cleverly reuse the same small amount of memory over and over.
Oh, so it's not about the size of the memory, it's how you use it.
Exactly. It's like this really elegant dance of, like, storing and retrieving information in just the right way.
Okay, and they actually won a bet with this race.
Yep, they did.
What was the bet?
Well, apparently, Stephen Cook and Pierre McKenzie, the guys who originally came up with the tree evaluation problem, they had this bet going for years that no one could solve it, using like the absolute minimum amount of memory.
And James and Ian proved them wrong.
They did, and they won $100 in the process.
$100 and like scientific bragging rights.
Exactly.
That's amazing. Does this mean they like definitively proved that the tree evaluation problem can be solved with minimal memory?
Not quite. Their 2020 algorithm was a huge step forward, but it still used like a tiny bit more memory than the absolute limit for that category.
Oh, so close.
So close. It was like they got right up to the edge but couldn't quite cross the finish line.
Okay, but they didn't give up there, right?
Of course not. They kept refining their approach. And in 2023, they published an even more groundbreaking result.
Okay.
They came up with a new algorithm that used even less memory.
Oh, wow. So they kept pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, they were like right on the cusp of solving this decades-old problem.
So what does this mean for our big question? Like, can every problem that's solvable quickly also be solved with minimal memory?
Well, their work has basically turned the field of computational complexity on its head.
Okay.
A lot of researchers now believe that the tree evaluation problem might actually belong to that minimal memory category after all.
That's wild to think about how this one concept, catalytic computing, has had like this ripple effect across an entire field.
It's pretty remarkable, right?
Yeah, and I think for me the most fascinating part is that it all started with something that we usually think of as a problem, a full hard drive.
It's a great reminder that limitations can sometimes be opportunities in disguise.
Yeah, and that sometimes the most groundbreaking discoveries come from challenging our assumptions about what's possible.
Exactly. You never know where the next breakthrough is going to come from.
All right, so we've gone from thinking of a full hard drive as a sign that your computer's about to die to seeing it as a potential key to unlocking some of the toughest problems in computer science.
It's a pretty amazing journey, right?
It is. But why should someone who's not like a computer scientist care about this?
Well, I think there are a few key takeaways here.
Okay.
First, this whole story shows us that we shouldn't be afraid to challenge assumptions.
Right. Just because something seems obvious doesn't mean it's true.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
second, it highlights the importance of creativity and thinking outside the box.
Like finding new ways to use existing resources, even if they seem limited.
Exactly. And finally, I think it reminds us that science is full of surprises.
Okay.
You never know what you're going to find when you start digging deeper.
It's all about staying curious and open to new ideas.
Absolutely. And the article ends with this really thought-provoking question.
Okay.
If we can find hidden computational power in something as mundane as a full hard drive, what other limitations are we overlooking? What other obvious truths are waiting to be challenged?
Ooh, that's a good one.
It really makes you think.
Yeah. Yeah, it really makes you wonder, like, what other things are we taking for granted that might actually be like hidden opportunities?
Yeah, right.
Like, we just need that new perspective.
Exactly. And this idea that full memory is useless.
Right.
That was just like this assumption that everyone had.
Yeah.
And it took someone coming along and saying, well, what if we try it this way? What if we think about it differently?
Right. And that's how breakthroughs happen.
That's how breakthroughs happen.
I'm thinking like beyond computer science too, right?
Yeah.
Like this idea of catalytic thinking could apply to so many things.
Oh, absolutely. Like, what other resources do we think are limited?
Yeah.
That could actually be used in new and innovative ways if we just approach them differently.
Right. What limitations can we turn into advantages?
Exactly. It's a really powerful concept.
Yeah. And it makes you realize that like every problem is just an opportunity waiting to be unlocked.
It is. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from this whole deep dive.
Yeah. That and the fact that like science is just full of surprises.
It is always keeps you guessing.
Always keeps you guessing.
Yeah.
So like even when we think we've got things figured out,
Yeah.
there's always more to discover.
Always more to learn.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We went from the frustration of a full hard drive
Right.
to the incredible potential of catalytic computing.
It's been a wild ride.
It has been. But before we wrap up,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with one last thought to ponder.
Okay.
If we can find hidden computational power in something as simple as a full hard drive,
Yeah.
what other overlooked resources or limitations might be hiding similar potential?
That's a great question to think about.
It is, right?
It really is.
So keep those minds working, keep exploring, and keep questioning everything.
That's the key.
That's it for our deep dive into the fascinating world of catalytic computing. Until next time, keep those minds engaged and keep diving deep.